You're listening to Following On with myself, Jon Norman, Jarrod Kimber and Steve Harmison. Let's talk Pakistani cricket. Start with you, Jarrod. Has Pakistani cricket ever been in a worse place on field? Obviously, with the terrorist situation in 2009, off the field, it was in a horrendous, dark place. Didn't play in Pakistan for a decade. They're back, which is great. But
Do you count the match-fixing thing as on-field or off-field?
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
I would say that, well, there was the match-fixing stuff. There was obviously the terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
There was also the
ball tampering.
Wasn't there? So there's three major negative stories that have affected Pakistani cricket. I mean, let's move those three to one side. Let's just talk about where they are as a cricketing nation in terms of performance.
Yeah.
And whether it is, and what needs to happen for it to turn around and get better. And also whether you think it ever will, when you consider that their players essentially aren't playing in a lot of these overseas tournaments anymore.
Yeah, it's very fair. I think the same thing is happening to Pakistan that happened to the West Indies, which is I don't think the talent has dried up. But in the old days, when the game was amateur, you didn't need to find every single last talented player around to be good. If you found a Wazam Akram or a Shoaib Akhtar or Inzamam Ul Haq, you could have a couple of other Ramiz Raja type players around and you could build a fairly good core, because it was an amateur sport in the 80s and 90s when the West Indies and Pakistan were probably the two best sides, right? Like until Australia take over, they were the two best sides. Ever since then, it's been a professional sport, right? And it's harder and harder to compete against professionals. So Pat Cummins and Shaheen Afridi, I'm a huge fan of both of them. I'm not sure that Pat Cummins is a better cricketer than Shaheen Afridi, right? I think they're very similar levels.
Yeah, the natural talent. The natural talent of the West Indians and the natural talent of the Pakistanis, I think, supersede majority of the world from a natural talent. But brain cells, cricket brain cells, and
it's not even brain cells, because
their structure is just off the charts the other way.
Yeah, because if you look at like George Headley and Javed Miandad and Clive Lloyd and Imran Khan, like they're genius cricket. Like they think about cricket in a way that others don't. Shaheen Afridi was playing T20 cricket when we didn't even know that was the way to play the game, right? Like they're so far ahead of that. But the structure and the professionalism and the lack of professionalism and they're not understanding simple things like diets and rehab. And you look at Shaheen Afridi and you're like, why hasn't he? But he can bat. We've all seen him whack sixes before. Why isn't he just 10% better so you can get the odd Pat Cummins-like innings out of him? And how did Pat Cummins get really good at batting? He basically spent 6 years in the nets. Every time he was injured, Pat Cummins was in the nets getting better. And Shaheen Afridi, when he's injured, they're trying to push him back into the side all the time. So you're not...
Or they're taking him out the side.
Yeah. Well, as well.
And he ends up playing in a domestic tournament in, Canada when he should be playing for Pakistan in an international.
The Pakistanis are quickly to throw each other under the bus, like you'd not believe. I think I've always said, Jarrod, I've always believed that cricket is an individual sport played by a team.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, and if you want to throw the West Indies into this, the West Indies and Pakistan are individuals playing as individuals. I don't think team comes into... I don't think they know how to play as a unit.
No, but why is that? Because it can't be cultural.
I think it's leadership. I mean, it's their style off the field.
I think off the field is
the problem I've got with Pakistan is, which you mentioned, I've got a question here and I've got no. And I actually think the question can go even further, and it's like, well, has Pakistan ever been consistently in a good place over the course of the day? Because I think under Mickey Arthur, possibly he had a little bit of structure over 4 or 5 years.
That's kind of what Jarrod's saying.
It comes to leadership.
Yeah, it comes down to professionalism.
Yeah.
So you could say the same thing you just said about individuals playing about the England team in the 90s, 80s and 90s, right? And this is the time before English cricket became professional. It's the same thing. If you have a dysfunctional, everybody's got to look after themselves because, it's a run on cliques and it's short-termism and it's not professional and I've got to make my own way to the ground. And then who is my boss here?
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. This was all taken out of English cricket. Overnight, and it's the same's happened in India. Remember when all the talk about India was, they can't field?
Yeah, or the different cliques within, you're from Kolkata or you're from Mumbai, and a lot of that is just disappearing because the most talented players are coming through because of the system, right? And you look at, I remember when Babar Azam lost his form. So I did that big piece about how he changed his trigger movements and it caused some issues for him and everything. And so all of his friends started contact, and I'm talking about former players and coaches, and they're like, he doesn't trust anyone to fix it. Yeah. Because every year or so, there's a new coach, there's a new selector, there's a new PCB chair, right? There's a new batting coach.
Well, if you've read Gideon's book with Wazim,
yeah,
it's 250, 300 pages, right? And if you think that there is anything more dizzying than the governance of Pakistani cricket, well, just wait till you find out how many different competitions they played back in those days. It was just you can see why match fixing started.
Yeah.
It didn't even start then. Continue. It was one irrelevant tournament after another. They must have played 12 different series a year, and they probably had 3 different PCB chairmen a year, two different captains.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you're injured, you're forgotten about, and then you come back after a year and a half. Going back to the point you made though, and I think this is absolutely key. You know, it's not just Shaheen Afridi. There's a long list of bowlers. Naseem Shah, for instance, when he came in,
he is the next Pat Cummins, right?
And then suddenly it's like, why are these guys suddenly bowling at 82 miles an hour? Why are they so inconsistent?
Why can't they field?
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, remember '96 World Cup was me and Sid Monga from Cricket Info, and we decided to like take stats. We wanted to see if the CricViz stats sort of matched our feeling on fielding, right? And we were watching them, and we were going. The ball went up in the air, and there was someone at fine leg, and there was someone at deep backward square, and it landed between both of them, and they both turned around and looked at each other, and I was thinking, any other team in the world at least is running and
they were running each other.
Or having a conversation. But these two didn't even move. The ball just landed 5 meters in from the boundary at like, I don't know, maybe like a backward square sort of area. And they both looked at each other and go, I thought you were going to do it. And you watched them field with their feet, right? And all these sorts of things. Nazim Shah can bat. Shaheen Afridi can bat. But they're not Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins, are they? They're not, they're not even Mark Wood type players. They're beneath that with the talent. You've got to work on every single level. And I've said so many times that all you need to do in Pakistan cricket is forget about the coaches, forget about the selectors and all that sort of stuff. Make sure every single kid who comes through between the age of 15 and 19 understands what being a professional is. And within 10 years, you'll be back to where you should be because they will grow up. But they come into this amateur system where they know that whoever is in charge of them today, like an 18-year-old kid in Pakistan knows whoever is in charge of them today, a month from now, will be starting their own YouTube page moaning about their bosses. Like that's literally what happens over and over again, right? Like you just watch former Pakistani players, their head selector, a week later, they've got their own podcast. It's like, well, what is the point?
But you talk about it there, you're right, you're absolutely spot on. But when it comes to structure and coaching and everything that comes with it, these kids aren't taught. A little bit you're talking about cricket in the 80s and 90s in England. It was an former old fellow from MCC who wrote 12 letters and said, "You come and play." You went. You had a few. Yeah. If you had a few hits, you bowled a few. He bowled a few. He sat there, had his gin and tonics, and that was the way the world was. I still think that's in Pakistan. Yeah. I think the people in Pakistan don't know how. Is this passionate game of cricket that everybody loves? There's no structure to how to teach people how to play cricket because it's pompous old men who have been very good at the game and just stand there and go, "Well, I've got a tracksuit and I'm in charge at the top of the net, and you bowl." Yeah. They don't tell them how to bowl. Don't tell them how to field. Don't tell them how to bat. So there's no structure. So it's the respect your elders, because that part of the world, you respect the people above you. And it just seems that every single time that Pakistan gets some sort of consistency of their cricket, then, like you say, somebody comes out of the woodwork with a little bit of power and goes, "Right, I'm in charge now. I'm taking over. I'm in charge now. And once I'm in charge, and once it goes awry, somebody else will go, right, I'm in charge now, and he goes
at the whole Mickey Arthur thing.
The whole Mickey Arthur thing.
We were,
and that's probably the most.
Were you commentating with him when he was with talkSPORT? Do you remember?
I reckon that's probably the most consistent it's been since probably Imran had it.
Yeah. The first Mickey
Arthur
one.
The first one.
But the second one when he was asked to do the job, but he was still coaching Derby, right? Like. He wasn't going to commit to that, and I'm saying this this is not Mickey confirming it, but this is just a normal human being understanding what he did, right? He wasn't going to take that job because he knew that when the chairman changed, he was going to be out again, and he wouldn't be able to go back to Derby because they would have replaced him.
Look what happened with Jason Gillespie.
Oh my God. I mean, and Gary Kirsten.
Yeah.
Look at all the money they spent on those coaches, and then they just completely chopped them off. But I just want to
Because they were going to do something that wasn't. It was right. It was the right thing from the rest of the world's point of view.
Yeah,
two coaches coming in to coach, where people were like from the outside, or from the inside, going, "Well, that's not the way we do it." I mean, I'm such and such. I've played at this level. I'm on top of this board. You're out. Jarrod comes in. He gets his mates in, and then that's like 45 times that's happened.
Oh, and then
that's
he's going to be out, and it's the next one.
That's why it's a bad role.
I was watching the Champions Trophy. How many bad fielding teams do you think there are in the world now? There really aren't fielding teams. There are fielding teams who fumble a little bit more, but you watch teams like Bangladesh and India, who were famous for not being particularly good at fielding. You have a couple of players, I mean, Afghanistan have a couple of donkeys that they need to hide in the field. India had a couple of donkeys at the moment that they have to hide in the field. But generally, fielding standards are so high right across the world. There's Pakistanis from 1970 through to now. They've always been athletic. Right? They can move around. Athleticism isn't the problem. But their fielding skills are so low compared to the other teams.
Because they're so low compared to their batting natural ability and their bowling natural ability, which is weird.
Yeah, and so you just look at that and you go, you almost want Pakistan cricket to be like, what if we were good at fielding, right? And we just looked at that as something to do. And then we could find the guy who bowls at 93 miles an hour, and the guy who bowls mystery spin, and the guy who hits sixes over his head, and all that sort of stuff. But they're not thinking about cricket the way that everyone else has been thinking about cricket, right? Which is, let's get better step by step. Let's bring in the odd overseas coach. But we don't always have to have overseas coaches. But what are the other teams doing? When we went and played in that overseas league, what was the thinking behind there when we played in that league? What happened when we were in county cricket? What were they testing in county cricket that we can bring back? You go back to Pakistan, and as Harmy said, someone comes in and they bring their friends in. That person goes, and the new person comes in and he brings his friends in.
Who've got no qualifications.
And so even when you have them with qualifications, they've got a completely different system from the last one, from the next one. It needs an 8-year plan in a country that has trouble looking at 8 months ahead, right?
Which would benefit from a coaching structure that coaches to coach kids from 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old. That 8-year plan, that 11-year-old, once he's been through that 8-year plan, I can guarantee if you put 25 Pakistani kids into a cricket environment in this country coached by the coaches that have gone through the system, I guarantee by the time little Johnny at 11 gets to 19, he'll be an unbelievable fielder and he'll understand the game better. And what I would expect him to do is Pakistani natural ability, bat and possibly ball, skill level with the ball will come through, and all of a sudden you make a better. I think just that one little tweak would make a huge amount of difference. But that culture I don't think will ever change, where the old man at the top stands there and tells you what to do. You do this and you do that. And I think that is where the layers underneath that a lot of cricket boards have got, and cricket structures and cricket coaching and cricket environments have got around the world, which makes them better. I don't think that happens in that part of the world. And hands up, you could possibly say that's in India as well. So where's the difference between India and Pakistan? Over to you. There's more people in India, but if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think Sri Lanka's...
India will be the same.
Yeah, Sri Lanka's had issues. India's had the same. I think the IPL's been so powerful that I know what you're talking about, the old pot-bellied coach that you and I have both seen in India and Sri Lanka and those countries, right? Pakistan. I think that is being changed quite drastically by just money, right? Like we just had a kid the other day who never played a senior game who played in the IPL, right? No one cares what the old coach says anymore. Why the coaches hadn't been playing that 24-year-old left-arm wrist spinner, I don't understand, Harmy. But the metrics said he was really good. So I think there's a dynamicism there. But basically, what is there, 250 million people in Pakistan compared to 1.3 billion? There are whole parts of India that they're still not getting talent out of, right? Like there are whole parts of India that they could still do that. But if you are Pakistan, I think you have to be, better. And they're not the only team struggling in the world, right? Sri Lanka's going through a very similar issue at the same time.
That sounds like a topic for another day as well, doesn't it? You are watching Following On.